Hello and welcome. We have something really fun to do today, and I see this question asked a lot. How do we check if the user has a token? Because we do give a token and we give them a logged in state in Redux, but if they come back to the site, they will no longer be logged in. If they refresh the site, they will no longer be logged in. So how do we do that? Let's get started. We're going to start in the front end where we will make a component. It'll be a component that displays nothing, but we'll put it in the header because the header is displayed on every page. So we want this component, which will basically just be a function, to fire off whenever it's reloaded. We're going to go into our utils right down here to util and add something to that. It's going to be called checkuser.js. Inside of checkuser.js is where we're going to write this actual function. And this might feel a little more like when we wrote our custom hooks, but we will import React in this. So we'll import React, and we're also going to need use effect like we did with those custom hooks. And that'll be from React. Then let's import a few things here. We need use selector that will interface us with Redux, and use dispatch, and that will be from react-redux. And now let's get started. So const check user, that's going to equal a fat arrow function, and then we will export it default. Check user. We're just going to return inside of here a div that's self-closing because nothing will be displayed from this. We will have a const called checkuser, and we haven't made this yet, so it's okay if you don't have this or it confuses you a bit, from our use selector. And what we do is point to state, and then we point to state user.user reducer. And that's where we're going to make that check user value. And we will finish up the logic here. We'll have a const dispatch. We've done this many times. That will equal use dispatch as a function, so invoke it. Next, we'll just use effect. We're just going to get this part started. So here's our use effect, the function inside of it. And inside of that is where we'll do our logic. And all our logic will do is if check user. So if Redux tells us to check a user, it's going to dispatch. And then it's going to be the function that we write. So that's not going to be possible to do right this second. So we'll leave this, and it'll be the function that we write, the action creator that will check the back end. So we'll leave this like this for right now. That's just fine. The main takeaway here is check user. So how does check user work? Why would it check the user if check user is true? Let's get that working in Redux. So we'll go to Redux, reducers, and the user reducer. What we're going to do is add a new part of this, not user. This is just going to be called check user. And this is going to tell our app if they should check this user for a token or not. It starts off as true. You should always check for the token. So we'll start it that way. Now, after the case of get user, which means we logged in or we signed up, we already have the user. So let's make that change here too. So the user is going to be the full payload. And now check user, since we already have it, we don't need to check anymore. So let's call it false here. Now let's look at that function one more time, thinking about that. So we have check user. It starts as true unless you log in or sign up, then it won't start as true. And then it will dispatch an action where it checks if you have a cookie. And in the back end, we'll actually look through that cookie, make sure it's not expired, make sure it's a good cookie for our website, this being the JSON web token. And then we'll give access. We'll actually take from that cookie the user information and send it right back to Redux so that user is fully logged in. Now let's walk through the action that we need to make as well. I'm just saving up these files. In actions under Redux, we'll go to the user actions. We'll head down to the bottom after logout action and export a new const. It will be called check user action. And we will fat arrow to an async dispatch. And then fat arrow to our function itself. So here we'll have a const, which will be a URL. This will just be a GET request here. So it'll be a GET request to auth, and then check user we'll use on the back end. Let's do our try catch. In the try block, we will do let res equal the response here. So await API dot get with the URL we defined right up here. And that's all we have to do with these gets. Remember that. And we are actually sending information over, but it's being sent as a cookie rather than in the body, so we could do this with a get request. When we have that information, we can dispatch the same type that we've been dispatching for login and sign up, the get user, because we'll get the user back from our back end. So we'll have the type be get user, and then we will comment to a payload, not password, but payload of res.data.user. We will need to make another type for the error though. So let's dispatch if we get an error. It will not really affect the program when we don't want anything popping up on the screen because it's okay if we don't find the user. So we want a type of check user fail. So if we get a check user fail, what are we going to do? We'll head back into the user reducer and define that real quick. It's a pretty simple one. I'll do it after logout. Here's the case. It's check user underscore fail. So we've failed to get a user back. What do we want to return here? All of the state the way it is. And the check user should now be false because we have checked and this user does not have a valid cookie, a valid JWT token for us. Let's just finish this up by grabbing the check user fail, putting it up here in our types. And we could head into types and put it there as well. So export const check user fail will equal check user fail. And we also are going to need that in the action that we just made as well. So to the top there, we're going to bring in check user fail. So now we know that if we check for a user and we don't get one back, we need to toggle that switch we have right here, the check user, from true to false. And that's what we did here with check user fail. And that means we have the action that we needed inside of check user here. So let's just finish this part up here. So we will import from, and then we'll find our action. I think it's up 2 here. Nope, it's up 1. Inside of Redux, then actions, then user actions, and check user action. Perfect. And we're going to put that in the dispatch, check user action, and invoke it. So if check user is true, please dispatch check user action and invoke it. Now we don't want this to keep happening, so we're going to give an empty dependency array. This means it will only run once. Empty dependency array means just once for what we're talking about. So we have this all worked out here, but we have no function to hit in the back end, and that's really the big lesson for today. The back end will be a little fun today. It's on the top here in controllers, auth controller, and we could head down to the bottom and start working with our JSON web token, and hopefully learn a little bit about it today. So let's export check user. I'm going to say check user cred so they know it's about credentialing. Async. And in there our request, our response, and our next. And then the body of our function here. It'll be a try catch, so I'll set that up first. And let's see what we're trying here. we want to get a token. So we let token, and instead of making token equal to an empty string like I usually do, I'm just going to do it as a token because I know some of you prefer that. So token is undefined right now. If request.cookies, then token will equal request.cookies.jwt. So what is this saying here? Token is undefined. If there is a request.cookies, token will equal request.cookies.jwt. Now, if there is no .jwt, token remains undefined. So we need to go ahead and make an error for that. We'll make it right here. So if there's no token, and I want to say or for something that's pretty important. If token triple equals expired token, because this is what we give back to them when we log them out. If it equals expired token, we don't want to try to look into the token because there's nothing there at all. Then we could just go ahead and give the, hey, you're not allowed to log in. So return next, and here comes our error. So we'll have a new error handler, give it a 401, and something like user does not have valid credentials. But if that's not the case, we're going to decrypt the token. I just have a feeling that we might need to decrypt the token for something else at some other point. So I'm going to just make another function for this. So const decrypt JWT, that will be set equal to async. We pass in the token, of course. And here we will return await jwt.verify, and then the token and the JWT secret that it needs to examine that token. And that is in your .env file. We made it a while ago, so just a reminder. Now let's check that token. So here, after the if statement, make sure you're after the if. We're going to make a const called JWT info. That will be set equal to await decrypt JWT as a function and pass in that token. In the token, we will have the user ID, the initiated time, and the expiration date. So we want to check now, is the JWT's expiration date greater than the current date? So let's get that function started here. If JWT info.exp, that's the expiration. And you know what? I'm going to do a console log here, so this doesn't seem so foreign when we actually get a few through. JWT info. Okay, so you're going to see jwt.exp later because it's part of the JWT info, the object that comes off of the token here. So we're asking if the JWT expiration is greater than date.now invoked, and then we actually have to put it into seconds. So we divide it by 1000 because date.now will be in milliseconds and the JWT will be in seconds. So if the JWT info.exp, so the expiration of that JSON web token is greater than date.now, then we have an error because that person no longer has access. So we will return next for this expired token here, and we'll put in actually really the same thing as this. So I'm just going to paste it into next there. Now things are going to look a little bit more familiar. So we're out of this if statement here, and I'm going to give it some room between these ifs because it does look a little messy. This function is a little large. Okay, so we're now in this if statement that ends here. We'll get some room. I mentioned on the JWT info here, we have the .exp, but we also have the ID of the user. We put that in there on a previous lesson. So we're going to do const user is going to equal await user dot find by ID, and then just pass in that JWT info dot ID. Now we have the user's ID to put in there. We have one more error for this, but we've done this one before. So if there's no user, we have to go ahead and return. So next, inside of next, we'll do our new error handler. And inside of there, we'll give it the 401, or we can even give it a 404 for not found, and say user not found. Finally, let's send that user back. Ooh, I'm above it. Let's send that user back. So after this if, we will have a res.status, and that will be 200, and then .json inside there. We'll have an object. The object will have a status. We'll make it success. And we will have a user passed back. So that's how we'll get the user from this function. And then finally, let's just cover all other errors by doing return next error, ERR. Perfect. So this is the largest one we've written so far, but there's a lot of checks in here, and we're decrypting a token, so there is a bit to it. Now we wrote a lot of code. So we have to hope everything's working. To be perfectly honest, I'm going to split my terminals, get things working with yarn, cd into front end, and then yarn there too to build those dependencies, and we could try some stuff out. So I'll head back into the main folder, yarn run dev. Now let's bring everything up on the side here. Let's make sure we can still see Redux. Yes, it says states are equal. Okay, we have our user, check user is currently true. All right, looks like we can give this a shot here. So head back into the code and let's bring check user into the header. So I'm going to get a fragment here that we can use. I'll wrap everything with it. And now we'll get that get user. So import, it was get, oh no, it was check user from, and then just find it up to into util, and then check user. And I'm just going to put it in above all of this. Check user, and it'll self-close. Now with that there, it will be making the request. Let's set up the request on the back end as well, and then we can actually just see if it works. So back to the back end, inside of routes, auth routes, let's set up that request. So I'll copy it, router.route. We make the changes here to check user, and then we called it here check user cred. Okay, great. And we have a get as well. So just make sure that's all set up, and it should be set up. Let's see what happens here. Let me load this. This probably went off last time, so I will reload. Let's see if anything happens. The get 401 unauthorized. Okay, good. That actually is what we want because we're not logged in. Okay, so let's log in now. I think I have this still. Let's check. Yes, I do. I'm logged in, and you can see that change right here up top that we did in the last video. But we're logged in here, and now you would know if you've tried this before, if you refresh the page, it'll be seen as you being logged out because all your information is cleared from Redux, all this info that's up here. So let's try it out and see if we stay logged in. And we don't. Okay, so we have an issue here. Let's see what it is. All right, I just looked through this to see what was going on. I console logged the date now and the expiration and realized I just got these symbols wrong. The expiration greater than date.now, this should be okay still. We want, if the expiration is past the date, so we want to go ahead and change it. If the expiration is less than date.now, the user has valid credentials. That was a silly mistake, but let's run it one more time. Okay, so you can see we're logged out. We have our login button here. We are now logged in. Okay, great. And we can log out like that. Let's now take a look at what came back here. This is the JWT token. It has the ID, it has the initiated at time, and the expired at time. So those are a lot of the variables that we were using when we did all of this. Now, the only other thing that bothers me about this itself is, say they have it bookmarked that when they come here, it goes to auth, goes to our auth page. They would go ahead and come here, be signed in, and just sign in again because they don't know that they're signed in. So we want to make this page redirect them to the home page in case they are signed in. Let's do that now. So let's head over to the auth page, and remember that'll be in pages. So here we are, pages, auth, and now we're actually going to take a look at the state in this page. So let's import use selector from, not inside there, react-redux. We used this before, and we will also import redirect. I think it's the first time we're using redirect. And we'll import that from React Router DOM. There you are. Now, let's const clearance. That's the clearance level that they have. So we'll const clearance and pull that out of the use selector first, and then pull that out of state dot user selector dot user. So we'll get the user's clearance from there. Now, if the user has clearance, so we'll do an if here. If clearance, if that exists, return the redirect component, and the redirect component will have a 2 pointing to our home page, which is our just slash there, and then close it up. Now save it and let's see this at work. That didn't work. Wow, okay, I meant user reducer and I did not type that. User reducer. There we go, we saw it work right there. Let's log out. I'll go to log in. I'll log that same person in again. And gotta remember the passwords. And I'll submit this, and we can see it's going to push us now to the home page. There we go. We have that all set up. All right, this was a lot today, and that was a pretty big thing to undertake. You did a fantastic job. I can't wait to see you on the next one, and keep coding.